More than 25 years ago, two young men wrote songs about the journey they were on. But life happened. Families, careers, the songs were lost. That is, until recently, when the original demos were found in a cardboard box. Now, with those songs rebuilt, remade, and released, Sean and Marcus are sitting down with their sons Austin and Samuel to talk about what they were trying to say all those years ago. This is Hidden Tracks, a conversation across generations about songs and the lives that led to them.
Hello and welcome to Hidden Tracks, the behind-the-scenes look at the songs on the first Twin Wolves EP, Spectral Hymns. I am joined by Sean, Marcus, Samuel, and I'm Austin. These tracks have been lost for nearly a quarter of a century, and here we are breaking down the final song on the first EP, Ordinary Faith, correct?
That's right.
So, like with the rest of these, let's just go to the beginning and where does it start?
Go for it.
I think this song is very much born out of the idea that faith that is real has to be gutsy, and it has to be every day, and it has to endure. It's, when we were first discovering our faith back in the days of Summerfield, we wanted to see miracles, we wanted to see all these extraordinary things. And I think a lot of people, that's what their faith amounts to, is I really love God in the big moments and when something incredible happens. Whereas most of our lives maybe are punctuated by that, but most days are just run of the mill. There's just regular stuff going on, and there aren't extraordinary things happening all around you. So I think Ordinary Faith was kind of born out of the idea that real faith lasts even amid just regular stuff. That it has to be ordinary. It has to be all the time. It has to, and I don't mean that faith doesn't ebb or flow, which we've demonstrated that on the record, but I think that faith that endures and that hangs on and that goes on is the only type of real faith there is. Because it's easy to believe when you're walking on water, but I mean, how about when the water's coming over you? Can you still hang on to that?
Yeah. We the last sort of stop in the narrative arc here is a sustained life. We came through the persistent self, we had the cry out, then we had that encounter in the woods in Cedar Row, and now we're sustaining. And what I would compare it to is things like diet and exercise. It's one thing to kind of go on some crash diet and lose a bunch of weight in a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden you stop and it just comes back, versus making true lifelong lifestyle changes where you're eating healthier and you're exercising regular and just becomes part of who you are. Like that's ordinary fitness, if you will, as opposed to trying to be He-Man and go run a marathon the first week that you decide to buy some running shoes. It just doesn't work. It doesn't stick. And I think that's the concept behind this, is that it's not ordinary faith in any way, meaning that's like a negative thing. Like it's not ordinary, boring, whatever. It's like, this is life sustaining every day. I'm going to wake up and have my cup of coffee. This is just the way that life is, kind of thing. That's the ordinary element of it, is it's just part of who I am. And that's a pretty big step in the evolution. And it's one of the things, probably to me, the most impressive songwriting on the album from Marcus, because of his age when he wrote it. I would guess we were 20-ish, maybe 21, I don't know, somewhere in there. And I think the concept that he uncovered in writing this song is something that most people don't really realize and understand until they're much older. Especially some of the very beginning, the opening line of the song says it's the revolutionary spirit that makes us unkind. And back to the Summerfield days, there was definitely a period of time where we thought, we've found this thing, everyone should know about it, everyone should feel the same way we do, we're going to go cram it down everybody's throat. And that was that revolutionary spirit, and in ways it did make us unkind. to others who did not necessarily jump up and get in line. You know, they didn't have the same encounter that we did. Doesn't mean they did anything wrong, but when we were looking at it, we were like, why don't they get it? Why don't they understand? You know, and we actually had a teacher, Belinda Westfall, who kind of set us down one day and was just like, yeah, you guys need to understand, you know, this is the way that this should work.
This is not how you win people over,
Right,
by
right.
being bullheaded with them about
Yeah.
what you believe.
And really what she was saying is you need an ordinary faith. You know, you need an everyday faith, you know, to show people over time your consistency and your quality in the things that you do and say and how you act and what you believe and those things. So, you know, I think for someone at 20 or 21 to look at themselves only a couple of years into their spiritual journey and recognize who I was when I was a year younger is not really who I think I want to be. And I want to be this more mature version of myself. And like I said, I think at that age to recognize that and to be able to articulate it the way that he did is amazing to me.
I've always liked the line about pushing your hands into the mud, because I hate having stuff on my hands. You know, and I fish and stuff, so my hands get filthy. But like, you know, anytime I ever eat pancakes, for example, I hate getting syrup, you know, on my fingers or whatever. I've always been a very clean person that way. And so that line in that song kind of represents not clinging on to an attitude of perfection or perfectionism, but just saying, you know what, let's just get them dirty. Let's just do this thing. Just pushing forward with the ordinary faith that takes guts to have when it may not make sense or you're not feeling it that day or whatever. Faith persists if it's real. You know, it's going to hang on like that. And I think that's why it's the perfect closing track for this album, is it kind of sends you off with the notion that we've reached, is that for all the wrangling around and ups and downs in the beginning, you know, you reach a point where you realize that forward you can hang on to who you are and how you feel and what you believe about it and your faith and your family, and you know, you can sustain those things on out into the future. And I think for them to have meaning, that it has to be that way. It has to last.
I think this song connects to Summerfield really well, because I remember when we were talking about Summerfield in episode 2, you talked about how a lot of the song is written around the idea of being very early in your faith and being incredibly euphoric about your faith. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned like Oscar kind of having to calm you down a little bit. And you mentioned that same thing with, I don't know who else you mentioned, but just now about your faith as well. And I think it's cool to see that if you're looking at the EP as a timeline, it's almost like at the beginning there's that euphoric state, but then you're falling back into problems with stimulant, and then it almost feels like Ordinary Faith is the perfect closer because now you've found it. Now it's not that you're never going to have tribulations again, but that you have found this is what faith is about. And I know I made the notes, going back to the Summerfield comparison, you making the notes in episode 2 on the orchestra sounds, the voices being added to the conductor. And that's actually the note I made about this song, was that the synth and the orchestral drums are extremely prevalent in this song, making me think about all these other voices you've accrued along the way to bring you into this joy. And I wrote Phoenix-like nature of this piece, which is rebirth. Yeah. You are not only acknowledging how far you've come, but you wanted something in the previous Cedar Row, and now it's rebirth. It's actualized. Now this is life, and it's not some fantastical miracle-led faith, but ordinary, everyday things that give me life. Yeah. And that was the culmination of the whole album. It perfectly put in one song, and it's a perfect bookend, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess the message is that love is gritty.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Well, and that you have to strive for it. I mean, that's
sure.
The thing about the chorus. Yes, we have, reached this point in the song where we have this sustained life, but the chorus actually says, this is my prayer. This is my deep down, honest prayer. and the very end of the chorus says, not just ordinary faith is great and it's what you need. It says it's within reach. So you always have to continue to strive for it. Like you can't just stop. You know, it's not like you arrive at a destination. That doesn't happen until we get to the other side. But while we're here on this plane, there's always a next step. But the next step doesn't have to be revolutionary. You know, the next step can just be the next day in ordinary faith, you know, and that's what's beautiful about it. It's a lot like, you know, a relationship with your spouse or whatever the case might be. You know, there are these moments of fireworks and those sorts of things, but the real beauty of it is every day. It's every day.
Yeah, I think I've always been a complete romantic about life and about just about everything, and Sean is 75% romantic, I think. But if I'm 100%, but you know that's
What's
the thing.
the other 25?
Pragmatic, dogmatic. I think that that's the thing about being a romantic is you look for that big stuff, but like you're saying with a relationship, when it's new, of course there's romance, of course there's fireworks, of course there's can't stop thinking about them, and I'm going out of my mind, and I can't wait to see them again and everything. But if that runs out of the cup after 3-4 years, what else is going to take you to 40 or 50 years with a person? That would have to be the ordinary faith. That would have to be the joy in the everyday. And if you don't have that with somebody, then you don't have the real deal, even though you may have felt great romance at the beginning of it.
Sure.
I find that that's the same principle with your faith, with belief in God. That it's good to be excited, but it's better to be dedicated.
That's a great way to put it, and definitely comes through there that persistence and consistency is love. Showing an episode of what Modern Family, Jay says showing up is half the job. Like being present and knowingly being present is such an underrated and perhaps unthought of thing for a lot of people, myself at the very least. I know I struggle with that, and being reminded that there's extraordinary in the ordinary is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
With that, though, on the backside of this, this is the culmination of the entire album. I have to imagine there's a lot on the production side that went into it, not only, mechanically, but emotionally.
Yeah, for sure. The last track that we talked about in the last episode, Cedar Row, I said it was definitely the most complete demo of all the 6 songs. This one was the most incomplete demo of the 6. It was just me and an acoustic guitar. It wasn't even like a produced version of that. I think I just set the recorder on and played it really quickly so I'd get it down in my head. Like you can hear the pick hitting the guitar body and stuff. It sounds terrible. But
I'm glad you did.
Yeah, but I think initially in my head this sort of was this collective soul, world I know kind of ballady kind of thing. That's where I started with it, and you definitely hear that in the original demo, which I think there's a clip of on the opening of this show here that we're talking about today. But when I heard it now, when I found the box 6 months or so ago, 25 years later, and I thought, what should this song be? What I really wanted it to be was something that my brother Scott would want to perform. That's kind of the headspace I put myself in. That's why this track is more piano driven than kind of pretty much anything else. There's piano in a few other songs, but it's sort of the driving thing, especially at the beginning of this song. And so I tried to build the arrangement in a way that I thought he would sound amazing singing this song. And he definitely would. He would sound way better than I do singing it. He's so talented. But that's really where I started, sort of this casting crowns, Mercy Me, adult Christian contemporary kind of sound. And so, I shifted the arrangement that way, brought in more piano, more kind of big percussion hits, to your point, sort of a choral sounding background vocal, which for those who are interested in this kind of nerdy stuff is really fun to make. You just record about 30 tracks of harmony vocals and then you compress them and you compress them and you compress them and you squash them all together, and they end up kind of sounding like the harmonies on this. They don't sound like any other harmonies on the rest of the album. So that was kind of a fun process. But, extra reverb on the snare, a big moment to close out, all the kind of hallmarks of that style of song. So I've got a few things for you here. Let's see. This, I believe, is going to be kind of the big finish that I just mentioned. And so what we're going to start with are some of the ambient layers that are underneath. There's a little bit of stuff going on with the percussion, those kind of hits that I talked about. So you'll hear that it's layered in here. So those kind of almost rain stick kind of sounding things. There's the strings. And this is where the big vocal's soaring over the top. It's layered up. So just some nice kind of, again, spacious kind of sounding things that I'm going to play the same clip, the same period with the full band now, so you'll hear some of those things underneath this. So, when you're listening to the full band, you hear the vocal and you hear the kind of the driving drum track and things that are there, but it's those layers, I think, that are underneath that really bring the feeling that you're feeling in it. The shove and the push and the pull.
That soaring feeling.
Yeah,
For sure.
exactly.
I was really impressed by how big this song feels production-wise, because you just mentioned how the choir sound you're getting in some of those sections is just you recording a ton of tracks and doing some good compression techniques on them. And I genuinely thought in this track that there probably was some like multiple people singing at the same time in spots, because the choir sounds really well done.
Yeah, it's cool. There's some other things. I use Logic Pro is what I do everything in, for those of you who are audio nerds, and Isotope is sort of the effects suite that I use the most. And there's a suite in there called Nectar, and there's a module in that called Voices, where you can go in and take any vocal track and say, hey, I want to add some sound that's an octave above and an octave below. You can do some things with EQ. I'm going to cut the lows on this one, mids on that one, highs on that one. So you might have myself recorded 3 or 4 different times the same melody line or the same harmony line, but then mix it a few different ways. You add different effects, a little bit of reverb for depth on one track or another, and then just squash those suckers all together. And it takes a while, but you can get some pretty cool sounds that way. Yeah.
That vocal there at the end where you hold out that note on Faith has just there's a clinching sort of note of emphasis in there that I know is not your voice giving out.
Yeah.
I know you've got more than that. I knew you did that deliberately, where it's kind of like somebody who's holding on to what they got,
Yeah, and so a friend of mine, Colby Cook, who's a music attorney from Tulsa, he and I used to have these conversations, and I would get really into the technique of how it was done, and he would always say, man, the rest of us are just monkeys. We just want to hear the music and dance. I don't care how they did it. It just sounds cool. But in that particular case, I know you're talking about, that was actually overdriving the microphone just a hair. And I just did it. I just did it by getting closer. So I was recording into the Rode NT1, which is what I used to capture the vocals. And so I was maybe here, and then when I wanted to kind of have that overdriven effect, I just leaned in a little bit, and that was enough to drive the recording, to saturate the recording just a hair. Basically the same thing that distortion on an electric guitar does. And so you hear it when it hits that note. It kind of has that little grip to it you're talking about.
Well, it emphasizes what the song is saying in the first place, of hanging on, holding on, and making it.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, it really couldn't be a better way to bookend the album. Now, this comes out June 1st. For anyone listening and who is interested, we've also got another EP coming out as well, correct?
Yes, that's right. So Spectral Hymns out June 1st. Probably by the time you're seeing this, it will be past that date. But the second EP, which is another 6 songs, also follows the same awakening arc. So the same track we've been talking about in terms of sustained life and those sorts of things. But the tracks are a little heavier, they're a little darker, they're a little bit more rock and roll, I guess you might say, from that era. It's called The Psychic Twin, and so it is Twin Wolves, of course, but it is a twin EP to Spectral Hymns, but just sort of on the other side of the equation, I guess. So if this is reflective, it's a little bit more visceral in telling this same story. So we look forward to sharing that with you as well. That'll be season 2 of the Hidden Tracks podcast.
Well, I'm really excited to hear it. This was a journey, to say the least, an experience, to say accurately. So thank you all very much for being so vulnerable and for allowing us to have that peek into your lives. That was incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here for it, and thanks to Isaac, the man behind the camera, that he's waving even though you can't see him. Very good. Well, thank you all. I hope you've enjoyed this, wrapping up season 1 of the Hidden Tracks podcast. We'll be back with season 2 before you know it.
It's the revolutionary spirit that makes us some kind. Scattering our ashes while it steals our peace of mind. But I'm ready to roll it over and push my hands into the mud. Waiting dirty fingernails for buried pearls of love. And this is my prayer. This is my deep down honest prayer. And these are my words, falling at your feet. Ordinary faith is within reach. A wilted fig tree is a bearer of your curse. It feeds no one. Is it any worse? Or maybe it's cold slow burn and the roadside sign for the next holy Moses whose feet turn aside. And this is my prayer. This is my deep down honest prayer. And these are my words, falling at your feet. Ordinary faith is within reach. And I'm not the special one, you're all that I become. I guess you planned it